Robocop Rogue City is now out on several platforms, and I wanted to take a look at this game and ask the question once again, is it worth buying? Because this is a bit of a smaller game, not really in terms of length, but in terms of budget. It's more AA than AAA, and it is from Polish game developer Teon. They are most famously known for making the Terminator Resistance game, which previously came out a handful of years ago, and that game, people argue about whether they like it or not. I mean, it kind of got mixed reviews from critics. So did this game here. I don't really care about video game critics though. What I care more about is what I and other players think about the game. This game takes place between the films Robocop 2 and 3. It's not necessarily overriding 3 and making it not canon for people who absolutely hate 3. 3 was not my favorite by any means. It leaves the door open for 3 to happen. So if you enjoy that movie, there you go. But you don't necessarily need it, right? Like, you don't need to play Rogue City to go watch Robocop 3 or to enjoy the first 2 films or however you want to enjoy this franchise. It's not necessary viewing or playing, but it does help expand the lore and the world quite a bit. And one thing I really like about this is it definitely gets the feeling of being Robocop and walking around Detroit very right. It does a lot to actually put you in the shoes of this character and make you feel like you're participating in the events of an unseen movie in the timeline of Robocop. Now, one thing that's really frustrating to me about this game just right off the bat, and a big negative that I think would make it absolutely not worth buying if you left it on this setting, is the quality mode. I have always been a fan of going for performance over quality, and what I mean by that is I would rather have a steady, good-looking frame rate where the game is not chugging and it's running well and it is smooth, instead of just having super shiny, great graphics. This is a trend in gaming that's frustrated me forever, where gaming companies, honestly, just to try and keep up with TVs ever since 1080p, and I would even argue before that, 720p with the PlayStation 3, a lot of developers were trying to push their game to look as shiny and impressive as possible, and it led to a lot of chuggy messes because they were prioritizing pixel output. They were, prioritizing hitting like 720p, 1080p, 4K, over actually getting a steady frame rate, which made the game a chuggy mess. And that's something that happened with Robocop Rogue City on the quality mode. You can choose between quality and performance mode on this game. Honestly, on PlayStation 5 at the very least, and the Xbox Series consoles, it is not worth playing in quality mode in my opinion. There is a marginal improvement in how the game looks, but if there's more than 2 or 3 people on screen, especially enemies moving around shooting bullets at you, it runs like a disaster. It's so chuggy, it hurt my eyes. I never say that about games, but it genuinely was giving me a headache on quality mode. I would not recommend that experience to anybody, but playing this game on performance mode, where it prioritizes frame rate, it's not always steady, but it actually just runs smoothly. It runs well. When it drops down to, 40 FPS, it's not really bothering me, unlike dropping down to something like 15 FPS on quality mode. I don't have the technology to actually, measure those frame rates, but my eyes can see that they are just dropping down to like PowerPoint levels at times and just really hurting. It's really uncomfortable. That's something that this game really needs to figure out. I don't even know why it launched with a quality and a performance mode on console if the quality mode was going to be so badly optimized. That's probably the biggest negative I have with this game, and it needs to be addressed immediately because the game starts you on quality mode. So if you're not going into the settings and looking and seeing, can I change this or not, you're going to have a very poor experience with this game, at least in my opinion. This is a first-person shooter. It needs to be responsive in order to have a good gameplay loop. This is not a JRPG or a turn-based combat Final Fantasy game where dropping some frames and having chuggy gameplay wouldn't affect you because you're waiting your turn anyway. This is a snappy FPS game where you have to moment to moment make decisions on who you're going to target, what you're going to do. That is heavily affected by the performance of the game. But once you get this game running in performance mode, I think it is actually very well made for the budget it was on. Most of my criticisms of this game do come back to the budget and things I would like to see fixed in maybe a potential sequel, but I do want to say some positives about the game that make it really worth buying. If you do enjoy this video, by the way, before we get even further into it, subscribing, leaving your comments and your feedback, letting me know what you want to see, if there's any games you want me to take a look at, stuff like that, really does help me out. I did recently make a movie review on Five Nights at Freddy's, and I've made a few of this type of video before, so checking those out helps me out a lot. Something I love about this game, though, is they actually got Peter Weller back to play Robocop again. Now, I don't necessarily think the other actors to touch the character did a horrendous job, but I do think Weller is the best actor to play Robocop. He's the one that we all knew growing up for fans of the movies. He's the one that when he was swapped out for 3, when he wasn't in the TV series, all these things, it was a big deal. People were kind of like, where's Peter Weller? So Peter Weller being back actually does a lot to add to the cast and the nostalgic feel of Robocop Rogue City and make it feel like it actually fits in with those movies incredibly well. The game also uses Nancy Allen's likeness for Robocop Rogue City, even though this character is actually voiced by Kosha Engler. Allen isn't in the game with voice, but it does actually go a long way, again, for fans of the films to see her likeness, to see Officer Lewis back and looking the way she should. I thought there were a lot of characters in this. I saw like the Sergeant who look mostly the way they should. Those things do a lot to immerse you in the world of old Detroit and make you feel like you're walking around as Officer Alex Murphy, actually on patrol and doing things as a Robocop would do. And speaking of doing things, something I really like about this game is that it has a lot of activities to participate in that aren't just necessarily bust in a door and shoot everyone. I do think those were kind of the most memorable moments, but there were a lot of human moments to this character as well in the films. His time being disassembled on the table when they would talk to him, and you would kind of see his backstory, or even the times where he would just walk around and speak to other characters as Robocop. Those are things that I was worried might be missed in this game because they usually are in Robocop video game adaptations, because for some reason a lot of people think, that's not fun, I just want to shoot people. I like both. So it's really cool to see in this game that you can actually walk around Detroit, you can solve crimes, you can investigate things, and you do actually investigate. You will investigate a crime, you'll talk to people, you'll figure out what happened, and then you will go to a location and deal with the problem as Robocop would. One thing that's neat about this too is there are often multiple solutions to dealing with these problems. Do you choose to fine a street graffiti artist heavily and essentially influence them in a negative path? Or do you choose to give them a warning and, the game says Robocop actually inspired this person? These are kind of your ways of serving the public trust and upholding the law, where it is actually up to you the severity of certain things that you want to do. So for example, here's something that was very unique that I noticed in the game. You can walk around, and if there are parking violations, you can choose to issue a parking ticket to the owner, and Robocop will actually say something about it to himself, and he will do that. And depending on the severity of what you're doing here, it's actually kind of like, are you a hard-ass Robocop, or are you kind of a softie? Those are the decisions that you're making over the course of the game. Or, for example, early on in the game, I was fielding some concerns for the police station, which you can actually walk around in and do a variety of activities and side missions in. And I was dealing with some civilian complaints where they were coming in trying to tell the police, hey, this thing happened to me, or hey, I'm in trouble for this, what can we do? And a woman asked me about her missing son. You can choose to either investigate this and look into it, and there is unique dialogue around it that actually plays into the character, or you can basically put her off and say, well, too bad, your son hasn't been missing long enough, come back when it's been another day. And those things actually do affect how people are seeing Robocop. There is a reputation system in here, along with a leveling up system for character progression that affect how the city is seeing Robocop, what the public perception of your character is. Those are really well-constructed RPG elements of this game that really immerse you in the world of old Detroit and make you feel, again, like you are this character. Now, something that I do wish that they had done was offer a third-person mode of some kind. Yes, I know, this would have likely inflated the budget quite a bit, because you would have had to have had a good third-person mode and a good first-person mode. I don't necessarily think this game should have been entirely in third person, but I do have a justification for this missed opportunity. And it's actually from the sentiment of the PlayStation 2 port of 007 Quantum of Solace, and it's something interesting to me because when asked why the team went with a third-person perspective, I remember this was done by YouTube channel Mini-Me, where he interviewed some members of the team and asked them about it. One answer that they gave for going with a third-person perspective, as opposed to the third-person and first-person perspective of the Xbox 360 and PS3 version, and I believe the Wii version of the game, was that they believed that if you are playing as a licensed, iconic character, you should be able to see your character. You should be able to know who you're playing as and actually see the model of that character and not just feel like you're in an FPS, not just feel like you are, looking at their hand the whole time and that's it. And I know this doesn't work for everything. This isn't going to work for a game that doesn't have a high budget, but I wish that this game had a higher budget, especially after the Terminator Resistance game, because a lot of times I feel like I'm just looking at Robocop's right hand and that's it. If you look down at your feet, they're not there. You hear the hydraulic press movements of Robocop walking, like from the movies, but you don't see your feet. When you look over at your hands, they're not there unless you're holding a gun, really, or if you're falling. If you're falling and you land, you'll see your hands and you'll see your leg, and that'll be it. There'll be basically a preset animation for getting up, and you will see Robocop in cutscenes or in discussions. Those are awesome. I'm glad that you actually see him instead of just being behind the screen or just being behind his point of view. But I do think it would have been really awesome to see a third-person cover system, third-person gunfire, actually to see what Robocop looked like as he was doing things, or have the option to do so. And even games like Star Wars Battlefront 1, all the way back on the PlayStation 2, they were doing things like this. I know game development has gotten more complex. Maybe it's not a fair critique to compare those two games, because obviously Star Wars has a higher budget, but I'm just saying that I feel like that was a missed opportunity with the game, especially because there is a costume skin system in the game that right now is just locked behind pre-order bonuses. This was another thing that I thought was done a little poorly with this game, where if you got the Alex Murphy edition, which was digital only for some reason, or you bought that pre-order bonus on the side for $5 or $6, you could get the Robocop battle damaged look from the end of Robocop 1, or you could get Robocop 2's outfit if you pre-ordered that version of the game. For some reason, though, it also locked a weapon behind that, which was the OCP sidearm shotgun that was locked behind that pre-order bonus. But it was frustrating because once you do that and you get these skins, you have to actually go out to the main menu and quit out of your game save file in order to change the actual costume of Robocop and his look in the game, but you don't actually see it very often. You only see it in these discussions and you see it in cutscenes. You don't see it during gameplay. There's really no difference to Robocop's hand depending on if you choose the Robocop 2 skin or the battle damage. There's not much difference at all. That's frustrating to me because I do think that with Robocop, you want to actually see Robocop. One of the most interesting and cool parts of Robocop was his design. It's iconic. It's one of the things that made the character appeal to so many different people, from older adults all the way down to children who watched the cartoon, was the character's design and iconography. But if you're not really seeing that, there's really no point to actually have any kind of cosmetics to it, and at times I think it impacts the actual Robocop feeling of the game because you're not seeing him on screen most of the time. Now, for role-playing purposes, I think it's great to be able to play as him in his field of view. I just wish there was an option there. When we're talking about the overall gameplay loop of the FPS portion of Robocop Rogue City, I do think it's very well done, again on performance mode. On quality mode, the shooting chugs a lot and the responses of enemies chug a lot. So I said, I don't recommend that as an experience to people, at least on console. I'm sure this will get fixed on PC by someone, but for console, playing in performance mode, the game runs very smoothly, and it does play a lot into the world of old Detroit in the movies, where you're essentially trying to take down the gangs, curb crime in Detroit, and it's pretty graphic. Now, is it perfect? No, but it's done very well where you can shoot off limbs of characters, you can blow their head off if you want to. The upgrade system in this game is well done and I do enjoy it. However, there are certain frustrating elements to it because a lot of areas you can't actually revisit very well. As of when I record this, there's no New Game Plus. I do think this game would really benefit from it though, because depending on how you upgrade your character, you're going to be able to see what dialogue options might be better, received from a character. You're going to actually be able to get into safes easier by being a safe cracker type Robocop, where you're able to use your engineering skill to actually get in there. Maybe you're able to earn XP quicker. Maybe you have higher damage output. Those are the kinds of things that I think would really help with having a New Game Plus, where you were able to experience the game progression maybe in a different way. I will get to certain areas in Detroit where there's a safe that I need to get into if I want some bonus things, and I either have to spend 10 minutes searching all over the room for some kind of random obscure hidden safe code, or I could just have 8 engineering skill to get into it. But one of the problems I noticed was the point of the game I was at, if you were to have 8 engineering skill, it would have meant that you put nothing into any other skill except engineering straight for the first 3 hours of the game. I don't really know who would have done that. I don't really know who would have sat down and said, I'm going to only do engineering. So some of these shortcuts, I think maybe, or some of these options I should say, maybe they should have required a little less skill points in order to do, because I just don't see anyone putting their Robocop entirely into one skill only. But I'm sure somebody did, or somebody looked up a guide and they decided to do it. But I do think the great thing about this game is just having multiple options, where if you don't want to do that, you can look around for the safe key. Or for example, when I was investigating a stolen car, if you didn't have a high enough deduction skill, I could go upstairs and I could find a crumpled up paper with some evidence on it. Or if I'd had a higher deduction skill, I could have scanned a different document in the actual business and figured something out and then gone and interrogated the shop owner. So there are options on what kind of Robocop you want to be, what kind of investigations you want to do. I just suppose I wish some of those options weren't so highly locked behind skill tree requirements. I wish those skill trees had been toned down just a little bit in terms of either what it takes to level up or how many points it actually takes to be able to use that particular skill to do a particular crime element of investigation, because I think that would have actually added to the variety. In terms of for anyone, I think Robocop is a very fun FPS game on performance mode that does offer a lot of replayability. It offers a lot of interesting looks at this world. It is fun, it is responsive, it has interactable environments in a lot of cases. Parts of them are, parts of them aren't. That's to be expected with this budget. It has great voice acting, very good world building, fun hidden secrets to find. There's a lot in here for just fans of the first-person shooter genre. However, I think what really enhances and elevates this game is being a fan of Robocop in general. This isn't really where I personally would start as a Robocop fan. I wouldn't say, yeah, you should start with Robocop Rogue City. Why? Because a lot of the payoff to these characters, a lot of the payoff to the things going on with Robocop himself, they are elements and references back to the movies, at least the first 2, that I think without them you are missing out on a lot of characterization. That's not really a negative though. That's something I would expect from really any sequel or any licensed video game property that isn't starting over from scratch, because they're going to be doing some references. There's going to be some stuff going back to those films. This is a really fun video game based on a movie franchise that finds a way to not be a one-to-one adaptation, and it does still pay off for both gamers and fans of the film. There are ways to play the game on easier modes, so if you're a fan of the films, but you're not a hardcore gamer, you can play this game on easy. In those ways, I do think that you can choose to play this game how you want to. I personally played the game on hard, which was not the hardest experience, just because I found the lower difficulty settings a little unengaging in combat, because it wasn't difficult at all. But again, it's up to you. Do you just want to roleplay as Robocop, walk around as an unstoppable tank, and not worry about your health? You can do that. Do you want a more engaging, difficult FPS system? You can do that. The game really does tailor itself to how you want to play, and I think for a game that is not a massively inflated budget, huge mega game, It's very impressive how they managed to do that. Is Robocop Rogue City worth buying? I would say yes for most people. Now, if you don't like the FPS genre, this game is not going to be for you. Even if you like Robocop, if you just don't enjoy FPS games, I just don't see you liking this game because a lot of the gameplay loop is going to be spent shooting people. If you're one of the people who needs fast-to-fast moment action all the time, this might also not be for you because you are not getting that every moment. In fact, I spent a lot of time and I found it equally as interesting just walking around Detroit solving crimes as Robocop. Some people might not care for that. That's cool. At that point, this game either might not be for you or you might want to rush through those sections of the game, in which case you'd miss a lot of stuff. You'd miss upgrades, you would miss XP, you'd miss public trust, where you actually build that reputation, and that would be kind of frustrating. In terms of Robocop movie fans, I personally don't see how this could be anything but worth it for everyone. There are some details I wish had not been overlooked, like I wish you could see Robocop a little more often, I wish you could actually see his legs when he's walking, I wish the hydraulic press noises of his legs were a little more movie accurate, and that's just from someone who's a huge mega nerd just coming off the back of watching a Robocop 1 and 2 mini marathon right before this game came out. But again, we got back Peter Weller, we got back Nancy Allen's likeness, we got back some other likenesses for the film, we got back a lot of OCP level, indoctrination and propaganda. We got back the dystopian Detroit. You're able to walk around, solve crimes, shoot people like Robocop would, listen to those performances, engage with the police. I mean, these are basically the things that people wanted from a Robocop game, being fans of the movie forever. So if you are a fan of the movie, this is really a fantastic experience. It's very immersive in that way. It's just that there's going to be kind of two separate groups of people that buy this game, and I do think that this game leans more towards being worth it at full price for people who are fans of the films. I'm interested to hear your thoughts down below. Let me know what you think about Robocop Rogue City. What are your thoughts? Do you think it's worth it? Do you not? Thank you very much to everyone who supports this channel. If you did enjoy this video, please be sure to leave a like and subscribe for more content. If you want to help support this channel, we do have a Patreon, we have channel memberships, we have our own store, enchantedglamour.com, which is also degeneratej.com. My wife runs this store. Together we both take comic book art from comic books that are being thrown out, usually unfortunately not even recycled, just thrown out in our state of Minnesota. We take those things from small businesses, we are able to turn them into transformative works of art. Sometimes they're coasters, keychains, trays. Also, my wife does make very wonderful handmade jewelry that is very high quality and fantastic, so there's a lot of very good things over there that I believe the prices are very, very reasonable on that go to help support our channel. We appreciate you very much. Have a fantastic day. And as always, everyone, stay shway.